One of the key things to focus on if you want to improve in Apex is your aim. Now, some will say aim trainers are the best way to improve your aim, but not everyone has easy access to them, and not to mention, it can actually be pretty difficult to translate what we learn in aim trainers over to the actual game due to the differences in opponent movement, your own movement, and things such as recoil and bullet velocity. Quite frankly, aim trainers just don't emulate the corresponding games no matter how hard you try. So today, I've got 4 things for you to work on to improve your aim faster, and that can be done in the actual game itself. But first, if you really want to improve your aim faster and get more in-depth guides, make sure to head over to the GameLeap website where we have hundreds of guides to help you improve faster. Guides covering fundamentals, advanced movement techniques, advanced legend tutorials, gameplay breakdowns, and so much more. We spend a lot of time to make sure we are giving you full breakdowns that will actually help you in whatever goal it is that you have in the game. So if you want to learn faster and become insane at the game, I highly recommend you join the GameLeap family to get instant access to all of these in-depth guides by checking out the link in the description below. Now, the very first thing that everyone should try to work on is their centering. Centering is basically when you are keeping your crosshairs close to where enemies are likely to be, or at head level. You see, one of the big problems 99% of the players face without even realizing it is having the crosshairs pointed down towards the ground while moving around. That rhymes. You can even see some pros doing this because honestly, it is a very hard habit to break, and even when you do break it, the habit can still be easy to fall back into. I still have problems with this to this day, and it may seem like not a big issue, but something you have to keep in mind is that in any FPS game, you can easily die in under a second to most guns, which means every millisecond counts, and having your crosshairs pointed towards the ground when an enemy player rounds a corner significantly increases the amount of time it takes for you to get onto target, usually putting you behind in a fight without you even realizing it. And usually when your aim starts off, well, it's pretty easy to maintain that momentum. However, once your aim is thrown off, often it can have a snowball effect, making it difficult to get back on track. Well, imagine starting thrown off. That's what is happening when you don't center your aim. It is just significantly harder to get something consistent rolling when you have to first get on target. Then by the time you do, they are already moving away from your crosshairs, and it just turns into a hot mess. Now, another big reason centering is so important is because of headshot damage. Headshots in Apex are no joke and should be something you should be trying to go for as much as possible, as it can significantly cut down the amount of time it takes to kill a player and also increases your total damage per magazine, which is huge. But again, if your crosshairs are towards the ground or not at head level, then it's going to make it significantly more difficult to hit headshots consistently. And that's the key here. You want to try keeping your crosshairs at head level as much as you possibly can, both in and outside of engagements. If you are approaching a corner where an enemy player may come out from, keep your crosshairs readied at the proper height so you can easily line up your shot. This is particularly important for the wingman. However, there is one exception to this rule, and that is with shotguns. Generally with these, you want to be at chest level since shotguns have a pellet spread. Hip firing to the head with them is near pointless and can pretty much guarantee missed pellets unless you are at point blank range. So something you can do in general to practice this is, first of all, get familiar with the average head height in Apex. You can do so by correlating it with common geometry around the map. For example, head height is usually just above a pillbox and around the same height as many of the boxes and containers and some ledges. So if you try to keep a mental note and maintain your crosshairs at those levels at all times, it should help you to form a habit as long as you're consciously bringing them up every moment you catch yourself not keeping them at that height. For our next tip, it's simply to focus more. Something we don't necessarily think about when it comes to our aim is how much we are actually focusing on a target. And you might be thinking, of course I'm looking at the target when I'm aiming. But to that I say there is a big difference between looking at your target and focusing on your target. There is a lot of visual clutter in Apex as it is, and it can be very easy to think you are keeping your focus on a target at all times, but our eyes are actually very good at taking in multitudes of information all at once. However, in order to do that, we have to use peripheral vision, and our brain actually has to fill in a lot of empty spots because of this. So basically what tends to happen is we will start focusing on the target, then our eyes catch our crosshairs or bullet tracers or the octane trail effect or the player in the background or the recoil shaking on screen. Literally any visual stimuli can briefly take your focus away from the enemy without us even realizing it. In your mind, you are still focusing on the enemy, but in reality, when these small visual stimuli happen, your focus tends to shift and you instead start looking at the enemy with your peripherals. When this happens, the enemy player tends to have a ghosting effect and makes it significantly harder to maintain accuracy during this time. And again, these shifts in focus happen so many times and so fast that you likely have no idea that you've been doing this, but now that you know, try to maintain pure focus of your eyes on the enemy target next time you're playing. You'll notice that the enemy will actually appear to be moving in almost a slow motion state where you can just see the direction that they're taking. But then you will lose focus and they will return to their normal state of movement as we normally perceive it. That slow-mo effect is what you want to tap into, as it helps massively with being able to read your target and how they will move and what action they're going to take next, or even if they are panicking, you can literally see it in how they move. I probably sound crazy to most of you right now, but I promise you it makes a big difference. Give it a try and you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, the next thing that is likely hindering your aim rather than helping it, particularly for semi-auto weapons or burst weapons, is putting way too much emphasis on flicking rather than tracking. Have you ever been in a close-up 1v1 with a wingman and you are just whiffing shots? Likely this is because of a combination of things. First of all, each time you miss a shot, it's causing you to panic more and more. Second of all, you probably aren't focusing on the target and are actually mentally focusing on the fact that you need to kill them, which in turn makes you miss more shots. Third of all, it is likely that you are just trying to react and flick to whatever you catch them moving to within your peripheral vision. Often the best thing you can do the second you start missing shots is to remind yourself to focus and start pacing your shots. Stop flicking everywhere and focus on accurately tracking your target or lining up your shot. Now, that's not to say flicking is bad, but it is significantly harder to flick accurately than it is to pace and track your shots unless you really know what you're doing and are practiced at flicking. Even then, it can still be easy to lose track, get caught up in the moment, then whiff your shots. We see high-level players do it all the time. So a much more consistent method is to, again, put effort into focus and just pace your shots, track your target, line it up, and then take the shot. Another big issue that players likely experience in Apex, causing them to miss shots, is not leading your target. Apex is a projectile-based game with the exception of the cringe rifle, and generally the faster the bullet travels, the easier it is to hit your shots since you don't have to calculate and accommodate for movement as much. Have you been wondering why you've just hit the most insane shots as with Vantage's ultimate? It's because her bullet velocity is crazy fast, which makes sense. It's an ability. You want it to feel good to the player. And this is just always something you want to keep in the back of your mind, especially with guns like the Wingman, whose velocity is super slow, which is why it is so difficult to use. So try to experiment with your gun on moving targets to see how much leading will actually be required. You can do this in the firing range on the moving targets, but it's better if you can do it on players from a distance or on a friend in during duels. And the final thing that can help you with your aim is aim training with specific guns. And no, I don't mean with software. The only exception is R5 Reloaded if you are on PC. That is by far the best way to improve your aim since it uses Apex's movement, guns, and bots with erratic strafing patterns that you commonly come across in game. I mean, it is literally just Apex. However, the best ways to achieve this without R5 is by doing duels or doing Arena. Arena is the perfect place to practice your aim since most of it is just a poke battle, so often it will come down to your aim at the start of each round anyway. Players are very predictable in Arena, so it is easy to just take a gun that you want to improve at and just stand in the back practicing your aim, and I highly recommend taking this approach if you feel you are very weak with a specific gun and want to improve at it. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope it helped. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.